space, like on YouTube, for example, where we're friendly. Most of us are pretty friendly with each other, but there is a level of competition that there, and like it's just natural, and most of it is friendly. But at the same time, once you see a person getting to a certain rank, they're on your team, and all of a sudden you either pretend they don't exist, and that's how it starts. And then you start attacking them. We saw that happen a lot with Jimmy Dore, for example. When he started rising through the ranks, you would figure that some of these big names would be on his team, but instead, Jimmy became an instant threat. Because not only was his show taking off, but then he was getting some crazy big names onto his show and breaking huge stories. People didn't like that. You would think, oh, wow, let me cover these stories as well. This is really important for the movement. But it stopped being about the movement. It started being about their bottom line. And I don't think that's where our focus can be if we want to see this world saved in the next 12 years. And that's what we're in danger of losing, that battle against climate change.
Right. And when the point you brought up about Jimmy Dore too, it's fine if you have disagreements with him. It's fine if you don't agree with everything he says. Yes, sometimes he says some things that are out there, and I disagree with him sometimes too. So if you want to point out those disagreements, and again, I don't subscribe to this idea that progressives in independent media can't criticize other progressives in independent media, because when that happens, you're asking for a situation like mainstream media. You ever see anybody in mainstream media? You see anybody in CNN talking about, oh, I don't think they covered the story correctly on MSNBC. I don't think they covered the story correctly in the New York Times, or vice versa, or anything like that. No, they have an echo chamber, and it's off limits to criticize anybody in establishment media for them.
Oh yeah, and before Jimmy and I came onto the scene, especially, I was probably a little bit more aggressive than he was because some of it was his people. But nobody wanted to push back against any of the other quote unquote progressives on the left on YouTube. And I'm like, hold on. But when I say, for example, Joanne Reed and MSNBC and Rachel Maddow got issues, and I go line by line about why they're saying, about what they're saying wrong. Is it malicious? Is it intentional? Even if it's unintentional, and I can go after them, nobody has a problem with it because they've already put them in the mainstream media box, right? But for example, when I used to have to go after Jank and Anna specifically this is like 2 years ago, I had to go after Anna. Anna said that there's no such thing as censoring on Facebook and YouTube. And in Facebook, there was literally, we will censor you if we don't agree with you. They literally said this in a blurb. I was like, and then the people on TYT were saying that they were being censored. So they're liars now? Like, come on. So when I was doing that, people were like, what are you doing? Oh my God, they're mainstream. Are they not they're the ally. I'm like, no. Just because you're on YouTube doesn't make you an ally. And especially when you started getting to a certain monetary bracket, and all of a sudden your rhetoric is starting to look more like this instead of down here with us, then it's our job to critique them. And there's nothing, if somebody went to critique me based off of legitimate critique, I have no problem with it. Like, I legitimately would not take it personal if you're critiquing a stance, for example. If you're not attacking me ad hominem, be my guest. It's going to be hard, but be my guest. So, but I agree 100%, man. It's inconsistent. It's inconsistency.
So when you, and then like for me, I have criticism of TYT and Jank and Anna too, but I'm not going to say, oh, everything that they've ever done is terrible. No, they are the largest online news platform. They were the first to come out and do progressive independent media, and nobody could ever take that away from them. But that doesn't mean you can't criticize them for what they're doing now and where they're wrong now. And so for when people, I guess I'm gonna call names. Fuck it. I ain't got nothing.
You might as well. This is a show where we be name dropping, so I don't really give a They know what's up. They know who I am by now, so they know what we.
so like when people like Sam Cedar and David Pakman and when they come out and try to say Jimmy Dore is all bad, everything he does is terrible, I can't agree with that, because Jimmy Dore is one of the most aggressive people to come out and go up against corporate Democrats. I've never seen, I'm not going to say never, I hardly ever see David Pakman do a segment criticizing corporate Democrats.
Yeah, he hasn't done that since the 2016 election, basically, when it was convenient for his narrative, because his viewership, think about it. He had 250,000 in 2016 whenever the election first started. And then he jumped up to like 400,000 by the end of the election. And then he started pivoting to try to mimic the mainstream narrative about Russiagate and, you know, blue no matter who and all that good stuff. Yeah, I agree 100%. I can't think of the last time I've heard him critique a corporatist candidate.
So yeah, you can't just come out and say Jimmy Dore is all bad. Jimmy Dore is all bad. Nobody should listen to him. He's terrible for the movement. How are you going to say that when he criticizes corporate Democrats as aggressively or more aggressively than anyone else? That's an important part of the movement. You can't just come out and say Donald Trump's bad. All these Republicans are bad. Marco Rubio's bad. Rick Scott's bad. Mitch McConnell's bad. You can't just say that, because you know who's enabling them. You know who's letting them retain all this power and who's getting steamrolled by them. It's the corporate Democrats.
And there's a legitimate argument to be made that, like, for example, somebody who they all love, AOC, may not even be in Congress right now if it wasn't for Jimmy Dore.
Right.
That's a fact. Like, her biggest fundraising blast came after she went on Jimmy Dore's show. That's when she took off. I know she took off on Twitter for a little bit, but then when Jimmy had her on YouTube and everybody had finally got exposed to her there, it was a wrap.
So yeah, you can't just, and then his anti-war stance, there's almost nobody who's as viciously anti-war as Jimmy Dore. So you're going to say because you don't agree with him on Bernie or bust that nobody should listen to him? That's crazy talk. Because again, Michael Brooks and Sam Cedar and David Pakman, how often do they talk about anti-war positions in Yemen or Iraq and Afghanistan? They don't. And I'm not saying everybody should cover the same exact thing. You do whatever you want to do on your show. But Jimmy Dore does important work in the movement and in progressive independent media. So to just write him off, it doesn't make sense to me. You can have your legitimate criticisms of him. You can say, hey, he did this and he said this in a video, and I don't agree with that. So let me correct the record. That's all fine. Before
you continue, I gotta everybody. You can find Dontrell's page at www.youtube.com/c/unapologetic.